The first thing that died was the music. Not because someone turned it off. Because the pianist, a 60-year-old man who had performed through a blackout, a kitchen fire, and one very memorable divorce announcement, simply stopped playing. Mid-note. His fingers froze above the keys like he'd forgotten what hands were for. That's how Dante Russo entered a room. He didn't announce himself. He didn't need to. The silence announced him, spreading outward from the door in a wave, table by table, conversation by conversation, until the entire restaurant was holding its breath inside a single suspended moment. A man near the bar reached for his glass and then didn't drink from it. He just held it. Forgot why he'd picked it up. A woman leaned toward her husband and started a sentence she never finished. A waiter carrying a tray of champagne flutes took one look at the door, took one look at the man walking through it, and changed direction entirely, toward the kitchen, fast, without explanation. Nobody blamed him. Dante moved through the room like weather. Unhurried. Inevitable. His suit was dark, his expression darker. Not angry. Not threatening. Simply, resolved. The face of a man who had decided everything worth deciding before he'd walked in, and was now simply here to execute. His security followed at the precise distance of men who understood their role was proximity, not presence. The maitre d' floated toward him like a man walking in a dream he couldn't wake from, all smiles, all terror, all trembling performance. Dante looked through him. And then, from somewhere in the middle of the silent, frozen, terrified room. The sound of small shoes on marble. Deliberate. Unhurried. Coming toward him. Dante stopped. Not because his security stopped. Not because something registered as a threat. He stopped because in 37 years of fear, in a life built entirely on people moving away from him, something small was moving directly toward him. A little girl. 7 years old. Yellow dress. Curly brown hair. The look on her face wasn't fear or confusion or the blank curiosity of a child who hadn't learned better yet. It was intention. She had come here to do something specific. And when she stopped directly in front of him and looked up, the whole room held its breath. She opened her mouth. There is a particular kind of power that does not announce itself. Dante Russo had studied that power his entire life, not from books or business schools or any respectable institution, but from the man who raised him. A man who never raised his voice. Never needed to. A man who had once ended a war between 3 rival families by sitting down to dinner with all of them, saying almost nothing, and letting the silence do the negotiating. That man was dead now. Killed on a Tuesday afternoon by people who had overestimated their position. Dante had handled the overestimation. Permanently. Then he had taken everything his father built and made it twice as large and 3 times as quiet. Quiet was the key. Loud men were visible men. Visible men were vulnerable men. The Russo organization moved money and power and information the way most people moved air, invisibly, constantly, without anyone stopping to notice it was happening. 3 city councilmen answered to him. Not because they were cowards, but because they were pragmatists. 2 federal judges had his private number stored under different names. The commissioner of the 9th district had been on Dante's payroll longer than he'd been on the city's, and considered that arrangement more reliable. His name appeared in no documents. His face appeared in no photographs. He existed, for all legal purposes, in the pure space between what could be proven and what everyone in this city already understood to be true. He was 41 years old. He had never been arrested. Never been indicted. Never been in a courtroom except twice as a witness, both times for things entirely unrelated to him. He had also never, in 20 years of operating in the darkest corners of this city, experienced anything he could not control. Tonight was supposed to be simple. The Fontana family had made a mistake, 3 mistakes, actually, in ascending order of audacity, and Dante was here to have a quiet dinner with someone who would carry a quiet message back to them. No violence. No spectacle. The kind of meeting that solved problems before they became problems. He was almost to the private dining corridor. Almost. His lead guard, Marco, former Special Forces, 10 years in Dante's service, a man whose own face had once made a weapons dealer cry, shifted almost imperceptibly at the movement coming toward them. His hand moved. Dante raised 2 fingers. Marco froze. Because the thing moving toward them was 38 inches tall and wearing a yellow dress, and no threat assessment on Earth was equipped for this. The girl stopped in front of him. She was small. Dark curls. Amber eyes, a color he associated with something he refused to examine right now. She had one hand holding the hem of her dress, the other hanging loose at her side. She looked up at him with the relaxed confidence of someone who had already decided how this would go. And behind her, Dante heard the sharp scrape of a chair. He caught the motion in the outer edge of his vision, a woman rising fast. Dark hair. Dark eyes. A thin scar along her jaw that caught the candlelight. She was already moving toward the child, weaving between tables with a kind of controlled desperation that told him everything about who she was. A mother. In motion. Towards a child who had just walked into the most dangerous space in the room. His chest did something he didn't have a word for. He kept his face entirely still. She had been watching him for 4 minutes before she stood up. That detail would come later. But it mattered, because it meant this wasn't impulse. It wasn't childish obliviousness. She had sat at that corner table next to her mother, eating her bread roll, and she had watched Dante Russo cross the threshold of this restaurant, had watched the room rearrange itself around him, had watched the pianist's hand stop mid-air, and she had taken all of that information in. And then stood up anyway. 4 minutes. She had thought about it. And decided. That was not the behavior of a child who didn't understand what she was walking into. Dante looked down at her. Move, he said. The word came out the way all his words came out, not loud, not cruel, simply final. The conversational equivalent of a door closing. The girl blinked. Took 1 step closer. Sophia. The mother's voice, from somewhere behind her, low and vibrating with contained terror. Sophia, come here right now. Sophia did not come there right now. My name is Sophia Cruz, she said to Dante. She said it the way people introduce themselves in negotiations, with her full name, with eye contact, with the conscious offering of information as a demonstration of good faith. I'm not going to hurt you. Something went through the room. It wasn't audible. But it was real, the collective internal convulsion of 40 people trying very hard not to react to a 7-year-old telling the most feared man in the city that she wasn't going to hurt him. Marco made a sound. Low. Involuntary. Not a laugh, something between a laugh and a cough and a man desperately fighting both. Dante's eyes cut to him. Marco was instantly, profoundly fascinated by the middle distance. Sophia. The mother arrived. She stepped between her daughter and Dante, not far enough to actually create distance, but the instinct was there. Mother between child and threat. Ancient. Automatic. She touched Sophia's shoulder and looked at Dante with a gaze that was carefully parallel to his face, close enough to be respectful, angled enough not to be confrontational. I am so sorry. She gets away from me sometimes and she doesn't think about. Mama, Sophia said, gently. I thought about it. The mother's grip on her shoulder tightened. Dante looked at the mother. And here is what no one in the restaurant could have seen from their careful not watching, the thing that happened behind Dante Russo's face in that moment. The fracture. Small, instant, immediately suppressed. Like a crack appearing in stone and then being plastered over before anyone could document it. Her eyes. He knew those eyes. He had told himself, across 7 years of discipline and silence and the careful architecture of absence, that he had trained himself past it. That enough time and distance and necessary suffering could sand down even the sharpest recognitions. He had been wrong. "Look at me," he said. It came out too quiet. Too direct. Too much like something other than a command. The mother's eyes came up. Met his. And the plaster cracked again, wider this time, because she knew him too. He could see it happening in her face, the way a color drains, the way a body goes rigid before the mind has finished processing the information it's been given. The way someone looks when the dead walk into a room wearing a suit. "Don't," he said. Low. "Just for her. Not here." She closed her mouth. Sophia looked between them. "You know each other," she said. Not a question. The worst thing about seeing a ghost is that you're never ready. You can tell yourself, rationally, that a person is gone, that you have grieved them, buried them, rebuilt yourself incrementally across years of quiet and determined survival. You can memorize their absence until it becomes the shape of your ordinary life. You can learn to reach for them in the dark and feel nothing, and learn to call that nothing normal. And then they walk through a restaurant door. And every year of building and recovering collapses in the span of a single heartbeat. Elena Cruz had been fine 20 minutes ago. She had been quietly celebrating, internally, privately, the fact that Sophia had eaten her entire dinner without complaint, which happened approximately never. She had been thinking about the drive home, about Sophia's bath, about the report she needed to finish tonight after her daughter was asleep. She had been living the ordinary life she had constructed, carefully and painfully, from the ruins of a different one. And then the restaurant went silent. And she had looked toward the door. And the ordinary life had cracked straight down the middle. She'd had 7 seconds to decide what to do. 7 seconds while her mind performed the violent, disorienting work of confirming what her eyes were telling her. Older. Different, the temples, the set of his jaw, something behind his eyes that hadn't been there before. But him. Unmistakably, impossibly, infuriatingly him. She had decided, in those 7 seconds, to do nothing. To keep her head down. To get Sophia out quietly and efficiently and deal with the earthquake happening inside her chest somewhere private. And then Sophia had stood up. Now she stood here, between her daughter and the man she had buried 7 years ago, and her entire body was a performance of calm while her heart threw itself repeatedly against her ribs like it was trying to break free. "I'm sorry," she said again. To the air. To the room. To whatever force in the universe had decided this was an acceptable thing to do to a person. Elena. He said her name. Just her name. And every carefully constructed wall she had built since the funeral, the grief counseling and the survivor instinct and the years of telling herself she was fine, she was okay, she had built something good, shuddered. "Don't," she said. Her voice didn't shake. She was proud of that. Furious at herself for being proud of it. Furious at him for giving her something to be steady against. "We need to." "No." She kept her voice low. Steady. Lethal in its quietness. "You don't get to say my name in that voice and tell me what we need to do. You don't have that right. You haven't had that right for Mama." Sophia's voice cut through cleanly. Patient. Surgical. "There are people watching." Elena stopped. She was right. There were people watching. 40 people whose entire attention was directed at this corner of the room while their bodies performed elaborate acts of looking elsewhere. She breathed. Pressed her hand flat against her thigh. Counted to 3. "Whatever you came here for tonight," she said to Dante, low and precise, "finish it and leave. Please." A pause. "We were never here." Dante said nothing. Sophia tugged her mother's sleeve. "He's not going to leave," she said, with complete certainty. "Sophia. He's been watching us since we sat down," the girl said simply. "Before he walked in. Someone told him we'd be here." The temperature in the room dropped 3 degrees. Dante went very still. Elena slowly turned to look at him. Is that true? She said. Nobody told her to ask it. No one prompted her, coached her, suggested the words or the timing or the particular way she would plant her feet and straighten her spine and look up at a man the entire city feared and speak with the calm clarity of someone who had been waiting a long time to say a very specific thing out loud. Sophia did it entirely on her own. That was the thing everyone in that room, the ones pretending not to watch, the ones gripping their partner's hands, the waitstaff frozen at their stations, would remember later. Not the words themselves, but the way she said them. Like she was doing something necessary. Like it was simply time. Are you my father? Not daddy. Not the soft diminutive of a child asking an emotional question. Father. With the weight of someone who understood exactly what the word meant and had chosen it specifically. The silence that followed was unlike any silence the room had held that evening. And this room had held significant silence. But this was different, deeper, stranger, the silence of something being said that could not be unsaid. The silence that follows the lighting of a fuse. Dante Russo stood completely still. Marco, to his right, performed the breathing of a man trying to become furniture. Elena Cruz made a sound, involuntary, fractured, that she immediately suppressed. She crouched in front of her daughter, both hands framing Sophia's face. Where did you hear that word? Her voice was the carefully assembled structure of a woman holding something very large together with both hands. Sophia. Where did you hear that? I didn't hear it. Sophia was patient. She always sounded patient when adults asked questions she found obvious. I worked it out. You have a box under your bed with old things in it. There's a photograph of a man I didn't recognize. She glanced at Dante. Then back at her mother. Last month I saw his face on the news. There was a report about, I don't remember what. Something political. His name was at the bottom of the screen but the photo was the same person. A pause. I've been thinking about it for 4 weeks. Elena stood up slowly. She turned to face Dante with the expression of a woman for whom the ground has been shifting for the last 10 minutes and has now simply given way entirely. Tell me, she said quietly. The words came out almost steady. Tell me she's wrong. Look her in the face and tell her she's wrong and we will walk out of here right now and you will never see us again and I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for that. Dante looked at Sophia. Sophia looked at Dante. And the thing in her face, the measuring, knowing, impossibly perceptive thing, held its position without flinching. He looked at her eyes. The exact shape of them. The exact color. The tilt at the outer corners that he saw in the mirror every morning and had seen in his mother's face in photographs taken before he was born. A specific genetic signature that did not negotiate with coincidence. 7 years old. Born approximately 9 months after the last time he and Elena had. He sealed that door. Looked at Elena. His jaw moved. Said nothing. Which was, of course, its own answer. I knew it, Sophia said quietly. Not triumphant. Just settled. The satisfaction of a theory confirmed. Sophia, Dante said, and it was the first time he had said her name, and the way he said it, careful and soft and like it cost him something, made Elena press her hand over her mouth. Let's sit down, he said. No, Elena said immediately. Elena. I said no. Her voice broke on the word, not into tears, but into something sharper. Anger. Clean, clarifying, 7 years compressed anger. You don't get to say my name like that and pull out a chair and make this manageable. This is not manageable. You are dead. We buried you. My daughter has been looking at a photograph under my bed for a month trying to figure out if her father is, if you are. She stopped. Pressed her lips together. Sit down. That's what you're offering me right now? Yes, he said. She stared at him. Because the alternative, he continued, very quietly, is you leaving this building before I can tell you why you're in danger right now. That stopped her. He watched it happen, the anger still there, burning clean and justified, but something cutting through it. The shift from emotional to alert. She had always been like that. The ability to feel everything and still assess the room. It was one of the things that had made her extraordinary in a world that tried to make extraordinary people ordinary. It was also one of the things that had made him unable to forget her. They sat. Not comfortably. Not willingly. Elena sat with the precise posture of someone prepared to stand up again at any second. Sophia sat with the posture of someone who had accomplished something and was now interested in what happened next. Dante leaned forward. Elbows on the table. Hands folded. His voice went low enough to die before it left their table. There are 2 men in this restaurant, he said. One near the bar. One by the service entrance. They were here when you arrived. His eyes stayed on Elena. They're not here for me. Elena went completely still. Who sent them, she said. I don't know yet. He said it evenly, the admission costing him something, because Dante Russo's brand was knowing everything. I noticed them 4 minutes after I arrived. I've had someone running their plates since then. His phone vibrated once on the tablecloth. He didn't look at it. What I do know is they've been watching your table specifically. Not the room. Your table. Elena's hand moved involuntarily towards Sophia. Sophia, who had been following this exchange with sharp, rotating attention, looked toward the bar. Don't look, Dante said quietly. Sophia looked at the table instead. Immediately. Without argument. He noted that. Why would anyone be watching us? Elena said. That's the conversation I've been trying to find a way to have for 14 months. She blinked. 14 months. The original threat, the Carazzi family, 7 years ago, I believe that was resolved. 18 months ago I started getting signals that something adjacent to it had resurfaced. Something I hadn't anticipated. A secondary player who had been dormant. His jaw set. I've spent the last 14 months trying to identify and neutralize it before it reached you. And in those 14 months, Elena said, her voice dangerously quiet, you didn't think to warn me. Warning you required contacting you. Contacting you created a trail. So your solution was to solve it before it became your problem. That's not your decision to make. I know that. You keep knowing things and then doing them anyway, she said. The anger was back, sharper now, informed by fear, which made it louder in its quietness. You knew you shouldn't disappear. You knew I deserved to know about the threat. You knew contacting me wasn't your call to make. You know all the right things, Dante, and then you make all the wrong decisions. Yes, he said. Stop agreeing with me. Would you prefer I argue? I would prefer, she said, each word deliberate, that you stop making decisions about my life in a room I'm not in. The table was silent for a moment. Sophia was looking at Dante. She's right, she said. He looked at the 7-year-old. I know, he said. Then why do you keep doing it? The question landed with the particular brutality of a child who hasn't learned yet that some questions aren't asked, because no one has told her that honesty has a courtesy limit that adults invented to avoid exactly this kind of accountability. His phone vibrated again. This time he looked at it. His expression didn't change. But Elena, who had once spent 3 years learning to read his face like a language, caught the micro-shift. The jaw. The slight stillness in his eyes. What? She said. We need to move, he said. Now. He moved them through the kitchen. Not through the front. Not through the private dining room corridor. Through the back, past line cooks who flattened themselves against prep stations without being asked, past a startled dishwasher, through a fire door, into an alley that smelled like rain and kitchen grease and the particular sharpness of a city at night. Marco led. Dante stayed behind Elena and Sophia, body between them and the open end of the alley, until the armored car arrived 30 seconds after Marco's signal. Elena climbed in without speaking. Sophia climbed in and looked around with the assessing curiosity of a child cataloging an unusual vehicle. "It has bulletproof glass," Sophia observed. "Yes," Dante said. "Have you ever needed it?" "Sophia," Elena said. "It's a practical question." The car moved. Dante waited until they were 3 blocks from the restaurant before he spoke. "7 years ago," he said, "the Carazzi family decided that the cleanest way to destroy me was not to come at me directly." He kept his voice flat. "Informational. They understood that I could survive direct confrontation. They'd tried it twice." He looked at Elena. "So they shifted strategy. They identified the people I couldn't afford to lose." Elena said nothing. But her hands, resting on her knees, pressed together. "You," he said. "Specifically you. There were 2 others, people close to me in different ways. They were going to move on all 3 simultaneously." He paused. "I found out 26 hours before it was supposed to happen." "The fire," Elena said. "The fire was the test run. A warning shot, to show me they were serious and could reach you whenever they chose." His voice stayed steady through enormous effort. It wasn't an accident. She had known that. She had suspected it for years, something about the investigation that closed too quickly, the origin point that never quite explained itself, the fact that they'd survived when the damage to her building suggested they shouldn't have. She had told herself she was being paranoid. "You pulled us out," she said slowly. "I was in the building when it started. I'd been watching the block all week." He held her gaze. "I got you out. Both of you. And then you disappeared. And then I made a decision. A terrible one." "A terrible one," he agreed. "I took stock of what I had, 26 hours, 3 targets, 1 organization. I could fight the Carazzis directly. I had been fighting them directly. It wasn't working." He looked at her steadily. "Or I could remove the leverage. By removing yourself. By removing myself. And you. By making it credible." A pause. "A staged death is only convincing if the grief is real. The funeral had to be real. You had to believe it because the people watching you had to believe it through you." Silence. Sophia was very still beside her mother. "You used my grief," Elena said. "Yes. You watched me grieve you from a distance." "No," he said. The single word came out different from everything else. Harder. More jagged. "I never watched. I made a rule for myself, I could monitor for safety. Threats, risks, movement in your vicinity. I could not." He stopped. His jaw worked. "I could not know the details of your life. It was the only way to maintain the distance." "So you didn't know about Sophia," she said. "I suspected. The timing. But I didn't confirm it." He looked at the girl. "I was afraid of what I would do if I confirmed it." "What would you have done?" He said nothing. Elena answered for him, her voice very quiet. "Come back," she said. He didn't confirm it. She waited for the confirmation and he didn't give it, and the silence was its own answer, soft and devastating the way the softest answers always are. "You were afraid," she said. "Of yourself." "Of what I would do," he corrected. "Which is different. Feeling the impulse is not the same as acting on it. I knew, rationally, that coming back before the threat was neutralized would put you in more danger. Not less." He paused. "But if I confirmed Sophia was mine, if I let that become real to me, I wasn't certain the rational version of myself would stay in charge." Elena stared at him. Something in her expression was doing complicated work, moving through layers she hadn't expected to reach tonight, in this order, in the back of an armored car with her daughter sitting between them like a small, watchful referee. You were protecting us from yourself, she said. From my inability to stay away, he said. Yes. Sophia turned to look at her mother. Then turned to look at Dante. That's the most complicated way to love someone, she said. Both adults looked at her. The 7-year-old appeared entirely unbothered by the attention. What? She said. Where did you hear that? Elena said. I made it up, Sophia said. It's obviously true. Something happened in Dante's chest. He recognized it, distantly, as the sensation of being perceived, fully, without armor, by someone who had no idea they were doing it. He had spent 20 years building a life around impermeability. He had been read by negotiators, by enemies, by people who spent professional careers extracting information from faces designed to give nothing away. None of them had gotten past the surface. This child had gone straight through. I missed everything, he said. He heard himself say it before he decided to say it. Raw. Unadorned. Not a performance of vulnerability, he didn't perform vulnerability, had no practice at it, but the actual thing. A fact being placed on the table. I know that, Elena said. I know you know. He held her gaze. I'm saying it because I need you to know that I know it. That I'm not sitting here trying to make a case for myself. I don't have a case. What I have is a list of things I missed. First words. First steps. Whatever she was like at 2, at 4, at 6. He stopped. Looked at Sophia. Whatever she was like before she was someone who walked up to men like me in crowded restaurants. I've always been like this, Sophia said helpfully. I know, he said softly. That's what I missed. Elena made a small sound. Not a cry, she was too controlled for that, had been too controlled for too long. But something underneath a cry. The skeleton of one. I was so angry at you, she said. Her voice was quiet and entirely direct in the way of someone who has stopped protecting themselves. For so long. And then I got tired of being angry and I made myself let you go. I told myself the story until I believed it. That you were gone. That we were enough, just us. That I had built something good from something terrible and that was its own kind of victory. She pressed her lips together. And then you walked through that door. I know. Don't tell me you know. Tell me what tonight means. Her voice sharpened. Because you said the threat is resurfacing. You said there were men in that restaurant watching us. So tell me, are we safe? Right now? Is Sophia safe? He said nothing. Which was its own answer. Tell me, she said. The original Karatzi threat was resolved 14 months ago. His voice was careful. Steady. The voice of a man delivering a report rather than a confession. What I've been tracking since then is something that grew from it, a third party. Someone who was waiting in the wings during the original conflict, watching how it played out, taking notes. A beat. Someone who understands that the cleanest way to destabilize me is not force. It's leverage. And we're the leverage, Elena said. If they know you're connected to me, yes. But I was connected to a dead man. For 7 years. How does anyone? Information ages, he said. Old connections get re-examined when people are looking for something specific. There's been movement in the last 2 months suggesting someone has been reconstructing a timeline. Going back. Looking at who I was before I disappeared. His jaw set. Before I had time to respond to what I found, you were already in that restaurant. So tonight wasn't a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. Elena sat with that. He could watch her processing it, the danger layered beneath the grief layered beneath the anger, all three of them occupying the same space. Then coming here tonight, she said slowly, sitting with us, letting those men see you with us, that made it worse. Potentially. So what was your alternative? Let Sophia stand in the middle of a restaurant and... There was no alternative, he said. Once Sophia walked toward me, once those men saw her approach, the connection was made. Walking away would have confirmed it without giving me any ability to manage the fallout. He looked at her directly. So I chose this. The controlled version. Because the uncontrolled version is the only other option. Elena pressed her hand against the window. Cold glass. The city moving past outside. You are still making decisions about my life, she said quietly. In real time. Right now. Yes. And you're aware of how that feels. I'm aware of how wrong it is, he said. And I'm telling you everything so that you can make your own decisions about what comes next. That's different from what I did before. Is it? Elena. He said her name with the weight of everything the night had contained. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am not asking to be let back in. I am telling you the truth, all of it, because you deserve it and because it's the only thing I actually have to offer you. A pause. But I need you to hear one more thing. She looked at him. The people watching you tonight aren't gone. Walking out of that restaurant didn't end the problem. Which means in the next 48 hours, I need to know what you want, whether you want me involved in protecting you and Sophia, or whether you want me to arrange protection through someone you'll never have to see. His voice was entirely level. Both are real options. Both are viable. This is your choice, not mine. Silence. Sophia had been quiet for a long time. When she spoke, she did not look up. If you arrange protection through someone else, she said, does that mean we won't see you again? Dante looked at the girl. That would be your mother's decision, he said. Sophia looked at her mother. Elena looked at her daughter, this small, impossible, clear-eyed person she had grown from grief and determination and the stubborn will to build something good. Give me tonight, Elena said finally. I need tonight. He nodded. Tonight is yours, he said. Sophia fell asleep somewhere around midnight. Not gradually, the way some children sleep, slipping slowly from wakefulness into quiet. She simply crossed a line, mid-breath, and was gone. One moment present, the next entirely surrendered to sleep, her head finding Elena's shoulder with the trust of someone who has never once doubted that her mother's shoulder would be there. Elena adjusted automatically. Held her. Looked at Dante over her daughter's head. The car was quiet. The city was quieter. The hour had thinned traffic to almost nothing, and the sound of wheels on road was the only sound in the world. She's been doing this since she was 2, Elena said softly. Running full speed until she just stops. A pause. Like someone pulled a cord. She gets that from me, Dante said. He said it without thinking. Then heard himself say it. I used to. He stopped. Used to what? Elena said. He looked at his hands. I used to operate for 72 hours straight without sleeping. Planning, logistics, negotiations. And then at some point I'd just stop. Wherever I was. 30 seconds and I'd be out. He paused. My father said it was a gift. The ability to switch completely off when the body demanded it. He looked at Sophia. Apparently it's genetic. Elena was quiet. When she spoke, her voice had changed. Something had gone out of it, not the pain, not the anger, but the armor around both of them. What was left was something raw. She's extraordinary, Elena said. You should know that. Whatever happens next, however you're involved or not involved, you should know what you made. She looked at her daughter's sleeping face. She is the most perceptive person I have ever met. She reads people the way other kids read picture books, fast, accurate, remembers everything. Her teacher called me in March because Sophia had figured out that one of the boys in her class was being hurt at home. 7 years old. She noticed something in how he sat down. Dante said nothing. She's fearless, Elena continued. Cautious about real things, she's not reckless. But fear of people, fear of situations, it doesn't seem to operate the same way in her. A soft sound. I used to wonder where that came from. She looked at him. He looked back at her. Elena, he said. I know I have no right to ask this. I know I haven't earned it and I'm not claiming I have. He held her gaze. But I want the chance to be something to her. Not a father, I gave up the right to that word. But something. Something in her life that isn't just an absence. An absence with a name, Elena said quietly. Yes. She looked at the window. The city going past. When I found out I was pregnant, she said, I sat in my car for 2 hours. Because I had just buried you. And I was terrified and alone and grieving and somehow also, she stopped. Somehow I was also grateful. Because it meant I had something left of you. A long pause. I have spent 7 years being grateful for something you didn't know I was grateful for. The weight of that landed on him like weather. She asked me once, Elena continued, why she doesn't have a father. She was 4. I told her that some families are built different, and ours was built on love, just a different shape of it. She looked at him. She said, okay, and went back to her drawing. And tonight? Tonight she went and found you herself. Elena's voice shifted. So maybe she has your stubbornness too. Power, in Dante's world, had a texture. He could describe it the way some people describe weather, the pressure of it, the temperature, the way it changed the quality of air in a room. He had spent his adult life building and accumulating and weaponizing it. He understood it, respected it, used it with precision. He had never once doubted it. Until tonight. He sat in the back of an armored car, watching a sleeping 7-year-old, and thought about the distance between the thing he had built and the thing he had lost. Between the empire that answered to him and the child who had walked up to that empire in a yellow dress and asked it a question. She had not been afraid. She had been afraid. He revised that, she had been afraid and had decided to act anyway. Which was not the absence of fear. Which was something harder and rarer and worth infinitely more. She had decided that the question was more important than the fear. He thought about all the men, armed, experienced, with genuine reason to be dangerous, who had looked at him across tables in dark rooms and blinked first. Who had calculated the risk and chosen retreat. A 7-year-old had done the math differently. He thought that might be the most powerful thing he'd ever witnessed. What happens tomorrow? Elena said. Tomorrow I start managing the threat. It will take time, days, possibly weeks. During that period I'd prefer you both in a secure location. He held up a hand before she could speak. Your location. Your choice. I can provide the security from a distance, without me being physically present, if that's what you want. And if I want you physically present, she said. The question hung between them. Elena looked slightly startled at herself. Like she'd said it before fully deciding to say it. She didn't take it back. Then I am, he said carefully. As whatever you need. Not more. I don't know what I need. She said it honestly, without apology. You dropped back into my life 3 hours ago. I haven't slept. There are apparently people following us. My daughter, she glanced at Sophia, still sleeping, still trustingly holding her mother's arm. My daughter has apparently been conducting a private investigation for a month and executed it tonight without telling me. She pressed her hand to her eyes. I'm running on empty, Dante. I know. I'm still angry. I know. I need you to not interpret any of this as forgiveness. I won't. A long pause. But Sophia is going to want to see you again, she said. You know that. Yes. And I'm not going to be the thing standing between her and her father. Whatever I'm feeling, that's not her burden to carry. She looked at him directly, clearly, with all the years visible in her face. So figure out how to make us safe. And then we'll talk about what comes next. He nodded. The car slowed. They had arrived, Elena's building, her block, her ordinary life that had been altered permanently in the last 3 hours. Sophia stirred. Blinked. Looked at Dante with sleepy, immediate, completely unclouded recognition. Did you figure it out? She murmured. Are you staying? He looked at Elena. Elena looked at him. Ask me again tomorrow, he said, to Sophia. She seemed to accept this. Settled back against her mother. Closed her eyes. Then, softer, okay. Tomorrow. He watched them walk to the door. Watched Elena key in the code. Watched Sophia, half asleep, look back once over her shoulder. Wave. Just like that. Like he'd always been there. Like he'd never left. He stayed in the car until the light in the third-floor window came on. Stayed until it went off. Then he sat in the dark for a very long time, and for the first time in 20 years, the dark didn't feel like strategy. It felt like waiting. For something worth waiting for. They didn't fix it that night. You don't fix 7 years in 3 hours. You don't repair that kind of absence over a single impossible dinner and a drive through the city in an armored car. Some things take the time they take, and the only way through them is through. But Sophia slept soundly that night. Deeply. Without stirring. The sleep of a child who has done something she set out to do and is entirely at peace with it. Elena sat in her kitchen at 2 a.m. with a cup of tea she didn't drink, staring at nothing, rearranging everything she thought she understood about the last 7 years. And Dante Russo, the man the city feared, the man who had built an empire on distance and silence and the careful avoidance of everything that could reach him, sat in a parked car on a dark street and kept watch over a third-floor window. Because old habits don't disappear. They just change their shape. He had thought, for 7 years, that protecting them meant staying away. Sophia had walked up to him in a crowded room and quietly, completely, dismantled that idea. The question was, what would he build in its place? If you want to find out, you already know what to do.